Hi, it's Ray from ProShaper Sheet Metal in Charlton, Massachusetts, and tonight we're going to be building another panel for the E-type bonnet build. We did the two front sections already. Thank you very much for all the viewership we're getting on those videos. Keep sharing them. And we've done parts 1, 2, 6 to make these two components and weld them together. Tonight is part 7, making this center section right here. We're going to pull this flexible shape pattern off, and this whole E-type bonnet is going to be built with nothing more than the flexible shape patterns and the gauges. The flexible shape patterns gives you the area value, and the gauges gives you the arrangement value. If you don't understand what that means, watch my video area and arrangement. That'll explain it really good. All right, first thing we're going to do is take this center section out. Mark, my cameraman and right-hand man, he's done all the flexible shape patterns and gauges. And we're going to remove this center section carefully. Take a razor blade. The low stick tape allows it to come apart. And we're going to carefully lift this up. Sometimes they'll separate. You want to go real slow. And it won't stretch because the glass filaments are in this top layer of tape. But you should take it easy anyways. So, and the big problem is if you take this low stick tape and touch it to itself, it becomes one really strong stick. Two lows becomes one really strong stick. So if it happens, you're not going to get it apart, and you'll have to make another flexible shape pattern. So we slowly take this off. Sometimes I'd start here and then I might go over here, but this one I think will come the whole way just from the back here. I might have to walk around and get that other side going. Slowly bring this up. Now this method only works on full surfaces. Someone emailed me today and they have a midget body out of fiberglass and they want to make it out of aluminum, and they were asking me where to break it up. It's a complex question. It depends on where your skill sets are and of course on the shape. So you really have to study every shape to figure out where's the best spot is to break them up. What I always say is you try to make it into a bite-sized piece. Now this piece here is an interesting shape. On this Jaguar bonnet, it's not acting as a hood scoop, it's more like a power bulge. And but as you'll see, this is actually a really nice, potentially a really nice hood scoop if you turned it around and went the other way. So it's a pretty common shape, and that's something you'll learn when you start to do shapes like any of these automotive shapes. They always look like something else, or there's a lot of commonalities. So once you start doing this work, you'll see these similarities, these commonalities, and the panels become more and more routine as you're making them. You just got to learn the initial skill sets, and then you keep enhancing those skill sets. Now what's happening here is I'm trying to pull this up and it's not letting me. The other piece of the low stick tape is a little reluctant to come up, so that's why I'm going to use the razor blade. For some reason it's stuck down there. I use the razor blade to pull it up, get it attached to the filament tape, and then we should be able to move on. Yeah, we got it. A little glitch, but not bad. All right, here's another one that's doing the same thing here. So this has been on for a little while, and it's been hot, so it's stuck pretty good. Alright, so it seems to be giving me trouble all along this edge. Oh, now it's okay. Oh, no, no, and it popped again there. So let's go over to this edge, which seemed to be working a little better, and we'll pull it from this edge instead. Slowly but sure. Now see, the tape is running this way, so you can pull it pretty good without having to worry about it coming apart on you. I'm going to make this one piece. And there it goes. So we got the piece off. Now the next step is to dust it. So that's what we're going to be doing now, is to dust it. We're going to dust it with plaster of Paris. And that's what I've always used. Some people use baby powder. I think plaster of Paris is probably less expensive than baby powder. So what I do is I dump it out a good amount. I take a paintbrush and spread it around. You got to hit all of the surface. So you just got to cover the entire surface with it. I'll give it a double hit here to make sure that I got everything, all the edges. You get the plaster of Paris, any hardware store. I get it at Home Depot, the only spot to get anything, it seems like now. Used to have a lot of lumber stores, but all we have is Home Depot now. Which, it becomes convenient because you know where everything is in the Home Depot. So you round up all the extra plaster and you put it right in there, so you recycle it. You only use a very little amount. So one of these, what is that, a half a gallon or a quart or something? Half a gallon, I guess. That probably lasts 2 or 3 years or more. And then I round up all this. And we'll put that back in here too. And then a little bit of it gets thrown away. Now, so we've got the patent dusted. We got it off. We're going to have to punch all the holes where the gauges go, so you see where all the gauges index on. That'll be a little bit later. But first thing we're going to do is we're using this brown piece of paper. That was always the question too, where to get these big rolls of paper. So Mark can pan the camera over here. You can see this big enormous roll of paper which will last a long time, and I believe I think the cost on those were like $60 to $80 a piece or something, and that will last a year or two or more. And I bought that from Uline. Uline is a packaging specialty company. I believe they're out of Pennsylvania, but they're an excellent company. You can buy cardboard boxes and paper and all kinds of good supplies from them. Very good on deliveries. So we're going to make the blank. This is an interesting shape too, as I was mentioning before, because if you puff it up the way it's supposed to be, you can see it's quite an attractive air scoop if you wanted to make an air scoop out of it. So the other thing that's interesting on it is it's a standard compound curve, but the flow of the radius is going this way and it's going this way, but it has this flange that we're going to incorporate into it because that's going to allow us to do a weld out here on a relatively flat area away from that radius so we don't bung that radius up when we do the welding. But you can see this is up, which means that that has actually a little reverse curve in it. So that has got the radius going this way, but it also has a radius going this way. So there's a reverse curve element all along the edge. It's a very slight reverse curve. That's why it's not sitting down. So after this gets shaped up, we'll have to stretch this edge out a little bit to give that reverse curve look to it, to make it just the way it's supposed to be. So if we look at the shape, we've got about 2.5 maybe inches of rise in the center here. So I might shrink it even though it doesn't meet I usually do a 3-inch. This can be all stretched, or you can do a combination of stretch or shrink. I'll probably do a combination. So I'll ignore this reverse curve at this point. We first have to do step number 1, getting the gross development of the shape. So we're going to pop this shape out by doing some shrinks and a little bit of stretching in the middle, and then it's just a matter of planishing. I think we'll get to our goal really fast, very little effort, and it all can be done with simple hand tools. And we'll show that. But first thing we got to do is make this pattern. But there was one other facet of this I wanted to discuss, was if you were making this part and fitting it to a wood buck or even a wire form, it would be a little tricky, because when you're first shaping it, these sides are going to be coming down like this longer. So there's going to be extra material here, and these sides are going to be flowing down like this. And if the wood buck or the wire form has the shape going like this, defining, and then going out like that, those sides are going to be digging right in. So it creates a difficulty factor when you're trying to fit this to a buck. And this is one of the great things of a flexible shape pattern. It doesn't care. So we're going to form this up, and we're going to be doing it, we'll be planishing in a curl arrangement like this. We're going to ignore this reverse curve on the edges for now, and we'll just pop out the shape, and we'll be working the panel like this in a curled arrangement. And we'll know how the edges are all fitting and everything as we're in the process. So I'm going to leave a little extra. I'm going to just make a paper blank here, get this out of the way. Mark made the gauges. The gauges are all here ready to go. And I need a magic marker. And I'm going to give myself like an extra inch here. And I only need, and squash this out to make sure that I get enough extra here. I only need about 3/4 of an inch or so extra on this one. And we're making this out of 060 3003 aluminum. 3003 is generally pretty easy to get in the US. I've been told by students that it's not so easy in other parts of the world, unless you buy a quantity of it. So hopefully I made a few conversions with these electric scissors. The only way to cut paper. These things run on a charger, and they last quite a while too. So you can use them for almost like weeks before you have to recharge it. And I believe they were like $18 on eBay. There's probably 10 different brands for sale on eBay. They're probably all decent too. So they're replacing the scissor. Just like my cordless metal shear is doing such a good job, these electric scissors, cordless ones, are so good too. So there's our blank, and the next step is cutting that 3003 blank out. So I go over to my stock rack. First thing I do, whether I pull out of here or with the smaller pieces up here, I always measure it. Don't take it for granted that you're pulling out, because it's labeled over here, that you're pulling out the right metal. So this says 063. I'm good to go, and it just so happens I think this piece might be big enough for what we need. It might be a little small, we'll see. So we don't have to wash it. The aluminum comes nice and clean. If it was steel, we'll have to clean it. All right, nope, that's, no, wait a minute, no, that's right, it's already got the extra in here. So we're a little tight, but not bad. We're only like 1/8 of an inch, and I got 3/4 on both sides here, so that'll work fine. Mark that with a magic marker, and we're going to cut that out with the cordless shears. All right, so I got my marker. As I mentioned, I think once in the earlier videos, I prefer the Milwaukee's. I literally spent $1 million on Sharpies. Not $1 million yet on Milwaukee's, but I love these Milwaukee's. So there's our Sharpie line. Every time you cut, try to cut nice lines. Don't let your shear wander and have a scalloped edge or something. You want to have a nice clean cut. So I've got, this is a Master Force cordless one, a little less money than the Bosch. When you're cutting aluminum, always put a little WD-40 on the blade, and when you're cutting, you always want the curl to go down. It goes out of the way. If the curl comes up, it hits this shield, which protects your knuckles, but it kind of binds. And for all these shears to work properly, the metal has to separate. If it separates too much, it binds. If it doesn't separate enough, it binds. So you got to find that Goldilocks point. So I like to set it on these 2x4s rather than the bench, so they don't pick up the dirt as much as the bench does. And I want to make sure that the curl goes down, so I'm going to be cantilever it over the edge of the bench. So that was binding on me a little bit. I got to keep separating it. So I should have cut these off in stages maybe. This is a Master Force brand. It's sold by Menards. And I bought these probably about a year ago. They're about half the price of the Bosch brand. This goes in the aluminum bucket, and this can go into the small bits container. And I got a little bit more here to go. Put another dose of WD-40 on it. Put this back where it belongs. So, if you have the WD-40 and you have that right amount of drop of your waste piece, it won't bind and you'll get a really nice easy cut. So there's our cut. The edge is a little messed up a little. And sometimes we sand them with 80 paper. Clean up the edge with 80 paper is a good idea. I'll probably put some gloves on, so once we start hammering on it and wheeling, the edge will get cleaned up by itself. So I call this step in the development of the panel, the gross development of the panel, step number 1. Now step number one should take not that much time. It should be pretty quick. 5, 10, 15 minutes to make your blank, cut it out. And now we've got ample material here. We've got a good safe edge, safety margin here on the edge. And now what we're going to do is we'll plot our shrinking position here. So there's not a whole lot of radius in here, but this is the classic case here where it's caught down here, and the only way you can make this is by either stretching it a lot or shrinking, or a combination of both. So we're going to put some shrinks in here, and that'll pop that up pretty quick. We'll need a few small shrinks around here and maybe less here. So we'll mark this where we're going to put the shrinks in. It'll be about the even amount on both sides here. Actually, they should be depicted this way here and backwards. I think my marker is going south on me. We'll put some shorter ones over in here. So that's our shrink activity. Now, we could shrink this with a thumbnail die. We could shrink it directly right in the shrinking facilitator, or you wanted to do it in the stump. But we're going to put the gathers in it, and then we'll go in the shrinking facilitator. I have the option to do it with a thumbnail die. I can do that. I prefer using the gatherer and the shrinking facilitator. It's really easy. It's inexpensive. So we'll go over to the gathering tool. So this is my gathering tool, and the point when you use this is you enter into it just right on the edge, and you pull down a little bit, and you want to see the panel go like this. That's showing you that the orientation is the way you want it to go. Sometimes this panel will pop out this way. You don't want that, especially if you come in deeper. You want to start on the edge. If it starts to pop up, then you've got to kind of force it down. But this has oriented the correct way. So we're going to do some gathers here. Pull that in. And these would be the same thing as if you were doing a tucking tool, but I don't use tucking tools anymore at all. We could use the thumbnail dies. I'm going to have to move this rug here, it's in the way. I like being on a roller chair. Let me move this rug. I actually like sitting doing this operation. I think I have a lot more control when I sit down. I can control how deep I want to go. And this front end needs a little more depth than the side. We're going to go a little deep here, but as we come down the side, we'll go less and less. Maybe we'll actually add another one in here. Let's see. There we go. This is a pretty effortless procedure. I'll try to mimic what I did on the other side. Kind of ignored my magic markers. There we go. Okay, so we got the material gathered here, and we're going to throw the flexible shape pattern on, and you can see now with those gathers that's giving us indicator of where we're at. We're a little loose here. We're all good in the front here. Now we won't capture that much. That means we could go a little deeper with the gathers here, because it's telling us. This is another great feature of the flexible shape pattern. You wouldn't be able to determine that from a buck. So let's go a little deeper. Now we're not going to capture all of this material from being shrunk like this, because we're going to lose a lot of it, but we'll gather enough of it, and then we're going to stretch the center out a little bit too. Come in a little deeper here. And this aluminum hasn't been annealed at all. We won't have to anneal this one at all. There's nothing that really requires annealing on this panel. But if you want to anneal, that's not a problem. It makes it a lot easier to work the panel. Alright, so we came in a little deeper, and now let's see how the flexible shape pattern likes that. Alright, now there's no gap here. It's laying right down on the backbone, so that looks good. But we're not going to gather that. We're not going to keep that much captured, but we'll get a bunch of it. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8 more, assumes about 16 gathers total here. So it's a couple minutes per gather to knock them down. All right, so we got 16 gathers. This is my largest shrinking facilitator. This is perfect for this. A panel like this will tend to megaphone back at you, so you really have to use some muffs or earplugs. So we're all set. We got the glove. We're going to use this end of the mallet. We hit right at the tail. We always are paying attention to this. This is really important. And we're going to hit it at the tail and then go one side to the other, back and forth. And we're going to get about a 1/16 or more of shrink, linear shrink on each one of these. So here we go. And this hitting these is not that much of energy expenditure. You're basically lifting the hammer up and then guiding its drop, maybe accelerating it a little bit. You're not doing this where you're putting your whole body into it, and that will really get you sweating fast. So generally I sit down when I do these. If my back starts to hurt, I'll sit down. Right now, not too bad. So I closed it up on the front. And I got a nice shrink action there. I'm looking for a hard spine. That hard spine is the collision of the two pieces of plates of metal that are colliding, and it's basically like a mountain developing. But in this case here, the mountain is getting crushed down. So we got one done. You can count it off. I don't think it's less than, it's probably about a minute or a minute and a half at the most to knock one down. 1, 2. So it's like 9 hammer blows. And the metal moves very easily too. Now, someone made a comment that they like the metal shaping mallets or bossing mallets better than my delrin mallets. If you like the metal ones, use the metal ones. If you like the plastic ones, use the plastic ones. I find the plastic doesn't mock the metal up so much. That's why I prefer the plastic. Somebody else commented that I choke up on the handle. Well, this is a pretty heavy hammer if you're pulling it all the way. Sometimes I do a double ham and hit like this if I really want to blast something out. This case here, I'm going to choke up. So that's basically 16 minutes if you counted a minute per shrink, and I don't even think it's that. I think we're probably more like 10 or 12 minutes. So we'll take the flexible shape pattern and see what we got. We had about 2.5 inches or so, and now we have very little down here, and we got a little bit more over in here. So we're going to stretch that center out a little bit. We'll pop it right here on the shrinking facilitator. We're going to use this end now to stretch it out. Now what happens as I stretch this center out, spontaneous gathers will pop up around the edge, and then you can take advantage of them. That allows you to do more shrinking on the edge spontaneously, and you get a little stretch in the middle. You see it right here, how that popped up? So we take that shrink. I'm concentrating on this side more. I'll turn it around and do the other side in a minute. Going to the middle, basically. And we'll pop it around here. I'm going to start hitting this side. And you can see, just from doing that little bit of stretching, you got a lot of shrinking that happened on this side versus this side. So now, and it's always good to have a little air under it. When it has air under it, you'll get more shrinking action. There you go. Look at that beautiful gather. Beautiful. This is why I call it a shrinking facilitator. It facilitates the shrinking process. The rubber holds the panel nice and tight. It's so much better than a stump. And with a stump of this size, it would take you quite a while to hog that all out with a chainsaw. This is all done in a modular fashion. I have my video, which is a premium video. You have to pay for it, all of 99 cents. Everybody used to, when they were buying DVDs or VHS tapes, they were paying $39 minimum to $79 to learn how to do this stuff. My tape, my video on the shrinking facilitator is 99 cents. That's on my website, ProShaper.com. Now we don't want to shrink over here, so we'll just let that go down. And we don't want to hit an angle like this. We want to kind of hit it square. And you always aim for a spot that hasn't been hit already. It's like lightning. You don't want to hit the same place. So you look around for spots that haven't been hit. So there we go. Let's see what we got. If we put this on a buck, the buck would tell us, what are you, crazy? It doesn't tell you anything, a buck. Because the buck would not accept this. The flexible shape pattern accepts it. Put that right on there. Look at that. It's laying down beautifully. There's hardly any gap here. Now, we're reading a lot of the mountains here and the valleys, and we still got a bunch of shrinking here to do. So right now we're nice and tight. After we do all these other procedures, knocking these shrinks down a little bit more and averaging this out, we'll probably have about a ½ inch of gap, which is a very manageable amount. You can wheel that out if you want. And I also prefer wheeling out the last ½ inch or so, because that gives you the ability to clean up all the shrinks so they absolutely totally disappear. Now, some people will say, oh, Ray, why do you do it this way? Well, it's very accessible to everybody. Anybody can make their own hammer. They can buy one from me. They can make the shrinking facilitator for little money, and you can get to this stage for just the cost of the material, and maybe we got a ½ an hour into it now, and we're almost there. Now, some of these panels on this bonnet will use the thumbnail die, and I'll show you the difference. We can contrast the thumbnail die versus the shrinking facilitator, both the quality of the panel and the time it takes to do it, and then you can make up your own mind what's best for you. Now, some people don't like to swing the hammer. Yeah, it gives you a cardio workout. Everybody needs a cardio workout. Every time I go to my doctor, they say, what are you doing for exercise? I says, you should come over to my shop and I'll show you. I walk about 2 miles a day in the shop, and I swing that hammer, and I get my heart beating. So it's a good thing. So now, I'm going to crunch these down a little bit more. And that's pretty good. Now I'll go to the hard smooth stump over here. Now I'm on the smooth stump, and my intent here is to pre-planish this so it's easier to go in the wheel. So I'm just going to crunch it up here, bounce the hammer on it, flatten it out good. I love having this stump. I got 2 of them. They come in really handy. Sometimes when you do a shrink on the edge and you tip it over on itself like this, it's very easy to take that tipped over section, put it on a sharp part of the stump, and you hit it like this, and you can open up that tipped over one. But the important thing is don't let them tip over. You got to be constant vigilant watching to make sure that doesn't happen. What happens if it tips over? If it tips over and you crunch it down, it will crack. So that's not the end of the world. A lot of times this is going to be cut off here anyways. You can just weld it up and it'll be just as fine, but you'd have to stop and weld it if it's a spot that you can't cut off. So there we go. We're going to dust it, and we're going to put it in the wheel now and then smooth it out. Should take about 5 minutes to get that smooth, and then we'll do an assessment again. All right, now we're at the wheel, and we're going to knock this down and get it all smoothed out. This is, I call the de-lumping, and You want to make sure the panel's clean. There was a little dust from the flexible shape pad, and I dusted it off. This is a real no-brainer. I mean, all you have to do is go through the wheels and smooth it out. Now, I'm going over at a right angle all of these shrinks, and it's not really a good idea to do that. You can start initially that way, but what we're going to do is go at an angle like this, at a 45. It's much more effective to knock those shrinks down that way. And pulling the panel to you is oftentimes a lot easier when you're going through this rough, lumpy stuff. Don't worry about what it looks like. It's immaterial right now. So we know from observation of the flexible shape pad fit that we're in the ballpark, but we're not 100% yet. We're probably going to be good if we're at like 70% or so. Maybe even 60%, but we're on our way. So we did the gross development, and now we're refining the panel. We're in the refining stage here. I don't think we'll have to put any more shrinks into it. I think we got enough. Now remember, aluminum moves a lot quicker than steel. People ask me, you know, why you use aluminum. Well, once you use aluminum, you never want to use steel again. I think all car bodies should be built with aluminum. Why? Because they take a long time to do, and especially if you're doing it on weekends only or in between all the other wife chores that you have to do and life chores that you have to do. It takes a lot of time. Everybody generally lives in a humid situation unless you're from San Diego. So if you have a steel body, it's rusting all the time. Aluminum does not rust. It's a beautiful thing. So, and then, you know, once you make one of these panels and you see how nice it shines up and it keeps that shine there, you just get totally taken in by the whole process. And everybody's scared of the welding, including me. You know, when I first started welding aluminum, I was horrible at it. I'm still not the best welder of aluminum. There's some really extraordinary welders out there. But once you get the basics down, either gas or TIG, both methods work really well. And you get this confidence level, and it just becomes another chore. Just like knocking these lumps down is a no-brainer task. Once you get your confidence level up in both shaping and also welding, it becomes a no-brainer task. So, and every panel you do, if you do close observation, you'll learn something new from every single panel you make. And you got to remember that so that you make the next panel and you keep improving, 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 improving. And once you've mastered the craft, anything is possible. You can make any car, any sculpture, any piece of furniture with metal, combine it with wood. It's just a wonderful, wonderful way to have fun, and you can earn money too at the same time. So now I've got most of the lumps and bumps down. I've got the shrink, I call it the shrink railroad track going on here. So we got to crunch these down. So I'm going to bump the pressure. The pressure is indicated by this red knob here. I'm at about this position. Now I'm going to bump it over to about here. Well, not quite one turn, maybe 3/4 of a turn. And now I've got some good pressure. And the way this works is the contact area on this wheel, I call this my workhorse wheel. I use this wheel so much. And you'll see me really change this wheel out. The way it works is that contact area is about 7/16 of an inch or so, maybe might even be up to a ½ inch. Now it's a 7/16. And there's about 20,000 pounds per square inch pressure at the point of the contact. So that's what really moves the metal. Now, as I've said before, I don't do the traditional English tracking pattern. I call myself a jazz wheeler. I wheel where the song requires me to go, where the shape requires me to go. So I'm looking at the panel and doing analysis constantly. I know exactly where the panel is and where I'm going. And that comes from experience. But it's all about internalizing it and remembering all that close observation. And as with this higher pressure, we go over these shrinks, we're crunching them in and they will totally disappear. You'll have no residue, or there won't be that railroad track noise anymore. They'll crunch in perfectly. But I generally find these clean up better than the Pullmax shrinks with a thumbnail die, but that depends also on how good your thumbnail die is. Mine is tuned pretty good, but you know, it could be tuned a little better. They do have delrin dies and some specialty material dies that are made by some of the suppliers that work really, really well with aluminum. But a lot of people think that using the thumbnail die is an effortless process, and I find that actually you use a lot of expenditure of energy when you're using a thumbnail die. There's a lot of pressure and pushing down and pushing in, and so I suppose you get a workout using a thumbnail die too. Where a thumbnail die comes in really good is on a really, really tight corner. One of my students is building a Studebaker 31 Indy car. They made originally 6 of them, and he was back at the class about 2 weeks ago, and he wire formed up the seats. There's 2 small seats, one for a riding mechanic and one for the driver. It's really tight. And all he had was a couple pitches and a few measurements, and he wire formed those seats up really nice. Gary Ash is his name. He's from Massachusetts, and one of those 31 Studebakers just sold out to Pebble Beach. It was a gentleman in New Hampshire that owned it for many years in his collection. He just passed on, and I guess his family put it up for sale up in Pebble Beach, and it brought over $1 million. So they're a beautiful car. They made only 6 of them. They were made in Indianapolis by one of the Indy car builders. I forget his name. But Gary was making the seats with the wire form, and then he needed some of my help at the class to make the bottom pan for that seat, which required a really tight shrink. And in that circumstance, unless I had a shrinking facilitator that would facilitate that shape specifically, that really nice, real tight with a big tall, it came up about 3 inches or so. So instead of trying in the shrinking facilitator, I did do that one with the thumbnail dies, which worked really well. So sometimes the thumbnail dies is a good thing, but most of the time I use my shrinking facilitators. So you can see now this has settled down. Even the railroad track is just about gone now. As I'm looking at the panel, I see a little hollow in the middle, so I'm going to pump that middle up a little bit. Now, I haven't referred back to the flexible shape pattern yet, but I know I'm going to need more. I always kind kind of harp on my students to wheel, wheel, check, check, meaning don't wheel for half an hour and then check the flexible shape pattern or the wire form buck, because they might have gone too far. Now, if you do go too far, you can always fix it. That's the cool thing about it, is this craft is very forgiving. But the important thing is to learn not to make those mistakes, do everything in the shortest amount of time as possible, and get really nice results. And we're getting the chrome plate look now, and it's all the shrinks are coming in really nice. And I'm going to look at the flexible shape pattern. I did have one comment on my YouTube that I talk too much. Well, if you're trying to teach people how to do this stuff, I think you have to talk a little bit. So I don't know what he was talking about. I'm still trying to figure out why I get thumbs down. I have a few people that give me the thumbs down. I don't know what their activity is. Maybe they're just haters or something, keyboard warriors. But if someone gives me a thumb down, I'd like to know why they're giving me a thumbs down. If they've got a better way, I want to watch their video so I can learn how to do it the right way. So far that hasn't happened, but maybe it will. If someone shows me a better way, I change my mind in 2 seconds. Now there's different ways. Different doesn't necessarily mean better. What's better is, you know, how long does it take you to do it? If it's the difference between an hour and 38 minutes, that's not significant enough. But if it takes a week to do something and only a couple hours to do it another way, the couple hours way obviously is a better way to do it. Now remember, the Italians in Italian coach building shop that wasn't well capitalized, they would make this panel just using a flat piece of metal and hammering it on the inside with just a regular body hammer. It'd be probably like, you know, 5,000 or 6,000 hammer blows to create this crown here. But they would get a beautiful crown, and they could get it pretty symmetrical, especially if they used gauges of some sort. And it's one of the ways that you can do it with almost minimal tools. And you can always look to see the Italians that they created some of the nicest coach work, the most beautiful designs, and obviously they made tons and tons of cars. So now you can see this panel is really starting to pop, and it's stable now. Let's see what we got. So we're going to put it on the bench, and hopefully I didn't go too far. Too far would mean the edges are all loose. Now this has the reverse curve on the edge, so it's going to be a little loose. No, looks good. So we're putting this on here, and right now we have about maybe 1/8 of an inch of gap here, there underneath this flexible shape pattern. We ignore this edge because this edge has got to be stretched later on. And we probably got 3/8 of an inch, maybe a half in here. So this is going to be our main activity. Always go to the spot on the panel that needs the most work. So we're going to work right in here. We'll come down here a little bit. So we're back to the wheel, and we're going to pump the pressure a little bit more to make the action happen a little faster. Now I'm doing some English pattern wheeling, so I don't totally discount it. I know I have to work mostly in the middle here and less on the edges. Now I don't have quick releases. I've mentioned this before. If you fall out of the wheels, I've got a nice relief on the edge of the wheels. I call that the highway entrance ramp. Go in at a 45, let you right in, even though I got a lot of pressure on there. The reason I don't like the quick release wheels, quick release levers, is it's very difficult to get underneath here oftentimes. Like if I'm like this, you can't reach it. Got some dust there. That's popping up nice. And now I'm going to give it even more pressure. This wheel I can really load it up. The stronger your frame, the more you can load it. The more you can load it, the faster you can pop the shape up. When you heavy pressure like this, it'll kind of leave a few ruts and stuff, but that's not a big deal. We can fix those up pretty easy. So we'll just go through here a little bit, and then we'll do our test with the flexible shape pattern. Now this is where I needed most of the extra area. We're creating the area value right now. That's primary. You have to do the area value first, and then we're going to do the arrangement value once we get it all set. So we're going to turn it around, do a little bit down on the tail here, which actually there's not the tail, it's the leading edge. It would normally be the tail on any hood scoop, but this is a hood blister, aerodynamic hood blister, aesthetic styling element. Nothing more beautiful than an E-type Jaguar. They're just an incredible design, designed by Malcolm Sayer, a aerodynamicist, worked for Bristol Aircraft during the war, brought all his ideas and his aesthetic sense to Jaguar, and he augmented William Lyon's already great sense of style and design. They worked together very well. Created some of the most beautiful cars, the C-Type, the D-Type, the XKSS, the E-Type, the lightweight E-Type. And I'm not sure who did the XJ13, whether Malcolm was involved with that or not. That was 1965, I believe. And I'm not sure. I'll have to do some research on that. You can see this panel's really popping with the shine now. It's not super smooth yet because I'm using high pressure. Okay, let's see what we're at now. Look at that. We're no gap whatsoever here on this front edge, and back here we got a little bit over here and a little bit over here, and this is all pretty good. So we've only got a little bit. I got to lower the pressure, or I might overdo it a little bit. Every time I put that pattern on, I get dust. It takes a while for the dust all to go away, so you don't want to embed that dust into the panel. So we're going to clean all that dust off, and we're going to give it a little bit more wheeling. We're going to lower the pressure. Now this very end, you have to go this way here to get the very end. So I'm just going to clean up these stops. That's where the wheel is stopping and reversing direction. And we're very, very close now.